The massive size of industrial machinery creates lethal blind spots. This worker misjudged the operational zone and paid the price for the vehicle's inherent danger. In the busy yard, a worker walked dangerously close to a heavy, articulated vehicle. Due to the truck's size, the pedestrian vanished entirely into the blind spot. The driver began a slow turn, unaware of the worker. The enormous vehicle impacted the worker instantly. This highlights the critical need for personnel visibility. Never enter the blind spot of heavy machinery. Ground workers must always wear high visibility vests. Respect the size of the danger. A catastrophic misjudgment in a busy print shop. The greatest hazard in any workplace is often not the machine itself, but the assumption that it is idle. On a factory floor, a large format industrial press sits, appearing momentarily still. A female worker, perhaps observing a jam or performing a quick adjustment, steps into the machine's immediate operating zone. She moves quickly, expecting the pause to hold, relying solely on the silence of the motor. But that moment of silence is deceptive. Suddenly, the massive internal mechanisms cycle back to life. In a terrifying instant, the machine's heavy components begin to move, trapping the worker and pulling her into the gears. Her quick move to fix a momentary problem has turned into a life-threatening entanglement. The machine was powered on, it was merely resting between cycles. Never trust silence over a visible lockout tag. Ignoring protocols turns a routine task into a deadly risk. All workers must be trained to use the LOTO lockout. Tag-out procedure. A complete power isolation before placing any part of the body inside operating machinery. Distance, awareness, and respect for machine power are non-negotiable. A suspended load collapse is swift and unforgiving. On a routine construction site, workers stand beneath the raised boom of a crane. The lift seems stable, but the load, a long, heavy steel beam, is not fully secured. A worker stands directly in the drop zone, focused on his task, his back to the danger above. In a sudden, terrifying failure, the beam detaches. There is no time to shout, no room to run. Physics takes over. The massive weight plummets down. The distance between the worker and the collapsing load disappears in an instant. This is a fatal reminder. The area beneath any suspended load is a strict exclusion zone. Always respect the swing and drop radius. Safety is not a convenience, it is a mandate. A routine climb turns into a dangerous fall when insulation fails. Working on live power poles is among the most hazardous tasks in any industry. On a quiet residential street, a utility worker sets up an extension ladder against a pole. The ladder is stable, but crucial safety protocols are missed. He begins his ascent, focusing on the high-voltage wires above, without a fall arrest harness. As he reaches the service point, he attempts to adjust or repair a cable. In a flash, he contacts an energized line. The electrical surge is instant and violent, causing a sudden loss of control. The current violently expels him from the ladder, and his body tumbles several feet to the hard street below. The ladder remains fixed against the pole, a silent witness to the immediate failure of personal protective equipment. The lack of a proper fall arrest harness turned a simple repair into a devastating high-impact fall. This is a critical reminder when working at height. Tie off immediately. When working with power, assume every line is live and demand lockout, tag out. Always rely on full-body harness systems and certified, non-conductive fiberglass ladders. Distance, awareness, and respect for current are non-negotiable. A catastrophic failure in load stability during a simple offloading. Manual handling of large materials is always dangerous, but the risk multiplies when loads are unsecured. A group of workers attempts to offload large, heavy wooden panels from the back of a delivery truck. The panels are stacked vertically and unsecured, relying entirely on friction and gravity. One worker moves to pull the first panel free, assuming the remaining stack will hold its form. But the stack is fundamentally unstable. As the first panel shifts, the collective weight of the remaining load immediately transfers. In a terrifying rush, the entire stack of heavy lumber falls outward, completely overwhelming the workers in its path. They are instantly crushed and buried beneath the massive, cascading weight. The lack of proper bracing and mechanical assistance turned a routine delivery into a mass casualty incident. This is a critical reminder: never manually unload heavy, unstable vertical stacks. Always use mechanical lifts, secure bracing, or tilt the load before unstacking. Ignoring stability protocols compromises the entire operation and endangers everyone nearby. Safety is not a convenience, it is a mandate. Miscalculating mechanical force turns routine maintenance into immediate danger. Working with heavy vehicle components requires proper stabilization, not relying on body weight. A worker is seen trying to free a tightly secured part on the side of a large truck's chassis, near the front wheel. He uses a long metal bar as an improvised lever, placing his entire weight onto the component to gain leverage. The area is cluttered, but his focus is solely on forcing the mechanism to yield. The component suddenly releases. The forceful snap of the mechanism causes the man's leverage to instantly fail. He loses his balance and is violently thrown backward onto the dusty ground. The reliance on excessive, unsupported manual force led directly to a debilitating fall. This kind of improvised effort is a guaranteed route to failure and injury. Always use certified, specific tools for heavy leverage tasks. Proper safety training dictates that force must be controlled, not explosive. Ignoring stability protocols compromises the entire operation and endangers everyone nearby. A catastrophic failure in isolation sparks an immediate, violent pressure release. Working on pressurized systems carries an absolute hazard where the smallest oversight results in explosive force. Two utility workers are performing a cutting operation on an exposed pipeline in an outdoor industrial area. They are focused on their task, assuming the line is adequately depressurized and fully isolated from any residual flow. The cutting tool begins to engage the metal. The assumption is instantly proven catastrophic. In a terrifying flash, the enormous pressure remaining inside the line violently ruptures the pipe. A massive high-velocity plume of gas and debris erupts directly at the point of cutting. Both workers are thrown backward by the sheer force of the sudden blast, their bodies lifted off the ground by the uncontrolled energy. This failure demonstrates the terrifying power of confined pressure. This is a critical reminder before any cutting operation on a pressurized line, mandatory depressurization, purging, and atmospheric testing must be performed. Even residual pressure poses a lethal internal energy risk. Distance, awareness, and respect for pressure systems are non-negotiable. Miscalculating distance in a tight spot creates a lethal trap. Never assume a vehicle is truly stopped until the engine is off. A worker is positioned in a narrow gap between a large truck and a solid wall. The truck driver begins to maneuver, possibly unaware of the man's precise location. The gap closes instantly. The worker is violently pinned between the immovable wall and the crushing force of the moving vehicle. This catastrophic failure of communication turns a simple workspace into a deadly vice. The area around any maneuvering vehicle is a strict exclusion zone. Always ensure clear communication and maintain an undeniable safe distance. A common act of opening a door triggers an immediate, violent explosion. This is the critical hazard of confined spaces where invisible gases collect without warning. A worker approaches a sealed storage room or industrial container. He operates the handle and steps inside, unaware of the deadly atmosphere that has accumulated. The ignition source is unknown, perhaps a static charge or an electrical contact, but the trigger is the breach of the seal. The moment the door swings open, the pressurized vapor finds its catalyst. In a terrifying instantaneous blast, the internal pressure explodes outward, the door is violently thrown back, and the worker is launched several feet from the opening by the sheer force of the concussion. This catastrophic failure demonstrates the immediate shocking power of accumulated gas in a closed environment. A catastrophic shift in an improperly secured load nearly turns a routine drop into tragedy. Handling heavy materials demands precision and respect for gravity's power. On a busy yard, a crane attempts to lower a stack of massive steel plates onto a truck bed. The plates are balanced precariously, likely relying on an uneven or inadequate securing method, and a worker stands dangerously close, guiding the load. The moment the crane releases the tension, the load fails. The stack of heavy plates immediately loses stability, shifting violently and cascading off the truck bed towards the nearby worker. He barely reacts in time, leaping backward to escape the crushing impact. Though he escaped injury, the incident reveals a devastating failure in protocol. This was a lethal near miss. This is a critical reminder. Never stand within the potential drop or shift zone of a suspended or resting heavy load. Always ensure loads are level, stabilized, and secured before the tension is released. Distance awareness and respect for gravity are non-negotiable. Stay safe out there. Which lesson from today's video was the most critical? Share your insights and experience in the comments below. Your vigilance can save a life.